You're listening to Coding Blocks, episode 25. Subscribe to us and leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, and more using your favorite podcast app.
And visit us at codingblocks.net where you can find show notes, examples, discussion, and more.
And send your feedback, questions, and rants to comments at codingblocks.net. And follow us on Twitter at codingblocks or head to www.codingblocks.net and find our other social links at the top of the page. And this specific episode will be codingblocks.net/episode 25. And with that, welcome to Coding Blocks. I'm Alan Underwood.
I'm Joe Zach.
And I'm Michael Outlaw. But first, this episode is sponsored by Infragistics. Are you developing on any .NET, iOS, jQuery, HTML5, or Android platform and looking to create your next application quickly and easily? Infragistics' new sample application library allows you to launch or download each app for a closer look, and in most apps you can even get the source code for easy modification and deployment. So what are you waiting for? Go to infragistics.com/sample-applications and find your inspiration.
All right, so I think Jay-Z has an update on our giveaway here. Didn't we? We just...
Oh my God, this was awesome. What a great idea, dude.
Yep. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with this one. Actually, it went way bigger than we thought. We got some really cool comments. We even had a little bit of poetry slam.
I didn't realize how many rappers listen to the show.
I know. It's really amazing. What you got to do is you got to do some beatboxing while you read the comments, but you guys should go check them out if you hadn't read. So that was really awesome.
I'm totally expecting like Eminem's going to jack one of these.
And where you
next.
Yeah, and where you can find it is /episode 24. So definitely go check it out. There were some great ones that were left there.
They were awesome.
Yeah, and some great ideas too. Jorrit was talking about possibly doing some sort of borrow book club kind of thing, which I thought was really cool, but I'm way too lazy to get involved with.
And, really, we talked about it, and the only real problem is enforcing that. Like, what's to stop somebody from just hanging on to the book and being like, okay, see you guys.
Right. So. I still got some Blockbuster videos in my closet, actually.
And we know how well they're doing. So
it would be cool, though, if it did get passed around through the community, though. That would be kind of awesome.
It would be awesome. I mean, if you guys decided to maybe say, hey, after a certain amount of time, then whoever's next on the list pays for shipping and then gets the book, right? Like, I mean, that's basically all we're doing at this point. So I don't know.
Pay it forward, however you want to do it, man.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
I don't care how it gets where. I just thought like I forget who even suggested it. I thought that was an awesome idea.
Jorrit.
And so who's the winner?
The winner is JP. So JP, if you're listening, send us your address at comments@codingblocks.net and we'll get that in the mail.
Yep, awesome.
And you'll be able to see the video of the selection.
Yep, that'll be on this episode at /episode 25. So definitely go up there, check that out. And also we got some more just fantastic reviews on both iTunes and Stitcher. Fortunately, Stitcher was back up, and so we were able to look at that. We appreciate all these. I mean, there were some really good ones that came in. So thank you very much for taking the time to going up to those places and leaving the review. And if you haven't already, please do by going to www.codingblocks.net/review.
Yep, and we wanted to call out the actual people who did it too. So this time we got JB Loves Me, awesome name. The Occasional Guru, which I empathize with. The Less Often Than Not Guru is my actual name on Twitter, but it should be the Daniel Podcast Blastoff, Ben E, and Commander Woe.
Yep, thank you very much, guys. And
yeah, so I wanted to just mention. I think we've talked about before how I asked the question like, when did Chrome start to suck? And at some point, I think the guys at Mozilla got a little jealous, and they were like, "Hey, we can make Firefox suck as well." So it really feels like now they all equally suck. And maybe it's just time that they should follow Microsoft's lead and just scrap it and start all over with Chrome and Firefox, because Firefox I've had problems with lately where like if I just leave it open too long, it just crashes.
So what happens with Chrome for you though?
I mean, just a bunch of little random things. It's not like one in particular, but like one that's been bothering me lately is just inconsistencies with Chrome across operating systems.
Okay, yeah.
That's been one nuisance. But I've had some other instances where like while I have the I think even Joe mentioned this in one of the last episodes, where if I have the developer tools open, you randomly will get like oops, I crashed.
Dude.
Although I fixed that by disabling browser link in Visual Studio. So I noticed it was sending all sorts of crazy. My network panel was just going crazy with all these like artery signal
I like how you saved that for the show.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yep, surprise,
Jerk.
Yeah, so we've all been struggling. You know what else I've been having, though, where you're talking about having the developer tools open, and this is in Chrome specifically? The developer tools just close, like, randomly. So I'll be in the middle of debugging something, and it just close. And I'm like, really? Come on.
Well, I haven't had that happen, but like I said, like with where I've had problems with Firefox here lately, though, is that like if I leave it open for too long, I've noticed that it's unstable,
Yeah, it's frustrating. I wish the browsers...
and I can't be the only one. And
Yeah.
but-
So...
yeah. So with that though, there was actually, what's today's day? There was, I think last week was the official 6-year anniversary of IE8, whose marketing campaign was awesome.
Yeah. And the days go slow, but the years go fast.
Yeah. But there was a company that put out this site. I guess they were trying to pitch to the internet, collectively, hey guys, we can do this. Let's get rid of, let's stop supporting IE8. Let's get rid of it. So there's this great site called breakupwithie8.com. If you haven't already heard about it or read anything of it, there are just some awesome things in there. So the idea was that you would tweet your breakup message. So treat it like a girlfriend. So rather than doing this in person, this is modern day. So you just tweet your breakup, and some of the breakup messages were hilarious. Like one of the top ones is that I'm leaving you because at least 5 of your action bars are not mine. And another one of my favorites, though, which in light of what I was just talking about with Mozilla, one of my favorites was, look, I was only using you to get to Firefox.
And that's probably true in a lot of cases.
It's so true.
You know what's really frustrating, though? The only reason IE8 still exists is because all the companies out there that will only support IE8. Like, there's a lot of major corporations that are like, internally, they say, hey, you can only use this one. And that's the only reason I believe it even still exists.
Well, you say that, but actually, there's been a recent uptick in Windows or IE8 usage that people, like administrators and whatnot across the internet have noticed that, like, hey, why are we all of a sudden, like, we've seen this downward trend in IE8 usage, and suddenly there's this random spike. And,
Bots?
no, it's not a bot. It's coming from IE8.
That's weird.
Yeah. So like at first, when I first noticed it, it was around, November timeframe. So, around the shopping, the beginning of the shopping holiday season. And the joke was that all the grandmothers are booting up their computer for the first time this year. And,
That's just that's the internet button.
They're doing some shopping.
Be what it was.
Right. But it's kind of continued though. Like that tick, just kind of stayed there. Right.
Yeah, well, you guys know why it's still around anyway, why the enterprises are sticking on it. It's because crappy developers like me have developed all these apps over the years that rely on all sorts of garbage like, ActiveX and stuff like that. And then now, like, no one wants to maintain them and they don't want to change them because they're all kind of somewhat working. So the businesses just kind of stay on them because they're stuck with these legacy products.
That would be extremely expensive to rewrite.
Yep.
Yeah. And before we get into today's topic, which is, the VNext stuff, a couple things. First, Punforgettable hit us up right before the show on Twitter. Like, awesome, a new episode coming out. Oh, man, it's about .NET. So, hey, hang around anyways. Even if you're not .NET guys, we always have something either mildly entertaining or somewhat useful. So,
I think all those cross-platform Java guys might find this one interesting.
yeah, this one's actually exciting. Not because we're .NET fanboys necessarily, but because it just really is exciting for coming into the cross-platform world. So
yeah, really, ASP5. What this means is, it's good stuff for us C# developers. It's awesome stuff for you Java developers because you don't have to do Java anymore. You don't have to.
oh, awesome.
Well, we'll get to the topic VNext, but for now,
yeah, and so I have one other topic. So we get a lot of emails from people asking about, hey, what are kinds of things that I need to look out for when programming or when I get started down this path? What are the kind of things? Well, I actually had a topic come up with a good friend of mine. And somebody I actually respect, but we kind of had a debate on this topic, and it actually made me want to crush my phone. So,
Oh God, here come the flame wars.
so here's what the argument was, or
It was,
the,
it was about white space, wasn't it?
oh man, no, this wasn't white space, and this person will go unnamed for right now. But here's what it was: would you rather have bad architecture or bad code? Now,
Wait a minute, can I pick neither?
now,
Is that an option?
so here's where this gets frustrating for me is this is on a new project, okay, on a somewhat new project. So, would you rather deal with bad architecture or bad code on great architecture?
Bad code, because the good code's going to end up bad after a couple weeks of iterations.
I'll say my pick here is that if I had to pick between a bad architecture or bad code, I would rather deal with bad code
Agreed.
because architecture is far more difficult to change. Bad code, you can at least start refactoring over time, and that cost that it takes to implement that, at least I feel like that's a smaller cost than just really bad architecture. Because sometimes if the architecture is really, really bad, like you might be talking like a complete rewrite.
Well, see, and that's where my problem is. So the particular issue we were discussing, because of the architecture itself and because it wasn't done right when the opportunity was there, the problem is it doesn't matter what amount of code you put on top of it, you can't fix the problem. You can hide it mostly, but you can't fix it.
Let me put this to you into a different way though. Okay, bad architecture versus good or bad code. Because every Java developer, they're going to tell you like, if you picked C# as your architecture, then you already doesn't matter how pretty that C# code is.
It's wrong.
It's bad architecture, so you already have started wrong. So now you're going to have to redo everything in Java, right? In order to get to a good architecture
And
good
vice
code,
versa, right? Like people that are looking at Java, they're like, "Wait, why didn't you do that in C#?" But
Now that's not the example I was thinking of when I was talking about like, you might have to, but it certainly does help illustrate the point in a comical way.
But I guess one of my things is this. So when I talk about bad architecture, I guess if we lay it out real quick, and I don't want to belabor this too long, but it was just the kind of conversation that comes up when you're working on this
I
kind
feel
of
like
stuff.
we're all like one of us has to pick bad. I'm going to pick bad architecture.
Oh, I will totally
just
do
to
it.
argue this out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm totally on the side of
So-
bad architecture.
So
now.
when I say,
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
thought you said bad code.
No, well, I decided to play devil's advocate, and now I've actually figured out like if you actually have good code, then it should be trivial to swap out the architecture. If
No,
you've
no.
got enough interfaces, you could do anything.
so check this out. But here's where my problem is: the bad architecture we were discussing was the lack of data. Okay, so what I mean is, if you don't
okay.
have data to support something, so for instance, let's say that you
And it's
take-
not something that you could reverse engineer.
correct.
And it's not something that you could like go back in behind after the fact. Like it if you missed, there's an opportunity cost
Right.
there. And if you missed the opportunity to capture that data, then that opportunity is gone
It's
forever,
gone.
never
Yes.
to be recaptured.
And that's the architecture I'm talking about. So you can argue all day long, should you do N-tier application or whatever. I'm not talking about that type of architecture. I'm talking about you made a decision at some point in time to where you were not collecting a key pertinent piece of data that you need. And so now, in
Does
my
that count
opinion,
as architecture though? Would you count that as architecture?
it is, right? If you set it up, if you have your data design set up that way to where
I
you're
guess
not
now we're
capturing-
kind of like, muddying the lines with like kind of data architecture.
Well, it's all part of an application, right? But here's my key. This is my take on this. Is it at that point, because you missed that data, as Michael put, you've lost that opportunity. It's gone. No amount of code, I don't care how beautiful it is, I don't care how solid it is, I don't care anything about it, you cannot recreate what is lost. And so what he talked about is, well, he'd rather have good code because you can use the facade pattern to hide bad architecture. The problem is you can hide bad architecture, but you can't make data up. You can't make things up that
Yeah,
aren't
and that's
there.
why I worded it as like opportunity cost.
Yeah, and so that's my
Because that
problem.
pretty much sums it up.
So my feeling is, if you are working on a project and there is ever a discussion of let's skip this, if it's at the opportunity cost of losing data that you then have to try and recreate out of thin air, you've lost. That's my opinion. That's my take on it. And this is just
I'm waiting on Java Boy over here to speak up with his architecture argument.
I got lost on the A word. I kind of want to do an episode now, just so I can
A-word?
research it on what architecture actually is and what architects actually do.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times you see architecture rules, and really they're just coding rules. But I have a feeling there's some well-defined parameters there that it would be nice to kind of exfoliate.
I think it depends on the shop. It could also be just documentation boy
It might
or
be.
girl.
Well, a lot of times it's what systems are like. It's such a wide variety of things that it encompasses, right? Like what technology stack, or how many tiers are you doing, or how many layers, or architecture encompasses so much that you could basically tailor it to whatever you want it to be. But
Yep. So am I drawing boxes all day then? Am I going to meetings?
potentially, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of both, right? Or you could
I
be
think it depends on how big the company is. The larger the company, then you're probably doing less hands-on
right
with the title architect.
or the number of resources you
Smaller
have.
company with the title architect, you're probably like, there's probably not a lot of difference between you and the guy coding next to you.
So it may not even be the large company; it's how many resources are on your team, right? Because you could have a huge company with a small team, or you could have I think it depends on the size of your team, right? Like an architect over a team of 50 people will probably
So
be
size
doing.
matters. That's is that the takeaway? Okay, so what do you want to talk about next?
All right, so all right, let's move on here. So, at any rate, yes, VNext. Let's get into this.
All right, so you guys have probably heard about VNext if you are a .NET developer or just not living under a rock, and so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about VNext or ASP5, and first I wanted to give you a picture of kind of what the goals were, what the high level view of ASP5 is, and we broke it down here into like 7 or so kind of things, and the first is that it's faster. It's more performant. It's also much simpler. And I don't really care about those, but it's much more flexible, which we'll explain in a little bit.
None of those are the exciting one.
Yep. And here's the exciting one. It's more cloud friendly.
No, I'm pretty sure that's not it either.
That's not it.
We'll tell you what that means too.
Yep.
All right. Now we're getting to the actual good ones. It's cross-platform.
Woohoo!
No, that's not it either.
Oh, come on. That's the only one I really care about.
what?
Yeah.
That's not it.
Yeah,
No.
that's it.
Open source?
No.
No.
Come on, that's kind of cool.
No.
All right.
And the last bullet here, it basically just says that it's Mo better. So
Better. Now I was pretty sure that they just wanted to use like everything else that's kind of been used out there in the open source world, and they wanted to just like suck that in, be part of it too.
So you think it's more consistent with like kind of normal patterns?
Well, I was actually trying to be funny about it, about a point that I was going to make later about like all the different tools that are used as part of it. That, but to your point, they did go out and well, not go out, but they did take in like best practices that other communities were using, like Rails or Node or Java or whatever, and take some of those best practices and incorporate it into it. But that's actually not what I was trying to make a joke about. Thanks for ruining that.
All right. So more consistent with reality. I like it. All right. And the improvements lie in kind of two major areas, which we're going to dive into right now. And the first are runtime improvements.
All right. So I guess the first one that we want to talk about is the fact that the MVC and the Web API have been unified into a single programming model, which is cool because, previously you had to bring them in separately. They had their own paths, their own, things or the routing that you had to manage. So
Yeah, and they were so similar. That's what kind of got me. Is like they felt like two halves of the same coin or sides.
Well, they were independently, well, not independently, they were completely different paths where they had to recreate a lot of functionality. And then that's where confusion came from. If you were using one or the other or both, we were like, well, hey, I know in this other one I could do X, Y, and Z, but why isn't this working over here? And that's why.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they weren't, it wasn't like it's not like Web API was built on top of MVC or vice versa. They went down completely different architectural paths.
So I'm glad this one's there, but I'm not too excited because I kind of feel like it should have been that way anyway.
Yeah, well, this is all part of the MVC6 redo where it's like unifying all of that. So now they're all together.
Yep, and MVC6 does require ASP5. So there's some numbers for you.
all right.
Yeah, so actually MVC6 does bringing together MVC, Web API, and Web Pages. I don't know if we mentioned that one.
We have not.
So it's all three of those now.
Yep. So I would categorize this change as making it simpler.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would categorize that as making it boring.
Outlaw's going to be the excited one here tonight. All right, the next one is a no compile developer experience. And this one's kind of cool, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. So essentially what they're saying is it's almost like an interpreted language if you're coding. Now, here's the only caveat that I found is it's if you're in Visual Studio. So essentially what they've got is Visual Studio's using the Roslyn compiler to enable dynamic compilation. So as you save a file, it's compiling this stuff behind the scenes so that the next time you go to refresh your page or something, it looks like it, is working like an interpreted language, even though it just compiled it for you behind the scenes. But it does make it a nicer experience. So you're not always going in and running build and then going back to your web page and doing that kind of stuff. So, but it does say it is Visual Studio integration with Roslyn. So.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to think before, it was always kind of the way of things. So I never really thought about it, but it is kind of silly to like generate these, these DLLs, which are then loaded into memory immediately. It's like, hey, why not skip the middleman and just kind of shove that straight in memory?
Well, it was also more frustrating than that because it was like halfway done. Like if you were working on something that was, front end, so it was in like your ASPX page, right, or CSHTML page, like then you didn't have to compile. But if it was in a CS file, right, a C# file, then you'd have to compile. So it was kind of like, oh man, this is like, I forgot I was actually not in the front end code. So
yeah. So
and this I haven't tried this yet, but I think it'd be really quick. I mean, C# is kind of like JITted anyway, so as long as it can keep those compile times quick, then this should be really awesome.
Yep. Who's got the next one?
Well, I think we should be careful about making JIT a verb.
It was just in time for those of you who are not aware of what he was talking about.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I would classify this change, the no compiler developer experience, as making it faster. Maybe
Well, except
simpler.
for like every PHP developer is like, wait, we already
yeah,
had
no
that.
kidding.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wait, you didn't already have that?
Wah, next one is environment-based configuration, which actually there's a couple different ways that you can get configurations now. And what that means is rather than kind of having this one web config file to kind of rule over things where you can get your key value pairs for basic settings, you can now get them from a variety of places, including a JSON
Like
file.
machine config.
Yes, or machine config or environment.
I was making a joke.
Well, yeah, it works though, but
Well, that's the same thing as your web config, kind
Right.
of. To a
It
certain
is,
degree.
but
Yeah.
like you'd use the machine config if you didn't want to have to transfer it around as part of your project, right?
Right.
Yep. But I don't even know how to change things in the machine config, like via script or something.
Well-
Well, I know in like the Java world, I can set all sorts of, it's kind of common to kind of set like Catalina variables or just, environment variables for your application.
Well, the machine config sets defaults, and then you can start overriding.
Well, that's in Windows, right? Now, here's another thing. This is
I am talking
cross-platform.
about Windows,
Right. That's a big deal.
So I don't know if you finished. So you got JSON files, XML files you can do in addition to your web config, but also environment variables. So
Can I do an INI?
I don't know why anybody would.
Yeah.
But so it makes me wonder, like what you just said with the Catalina properties and that kind of stuff. Like you can set environment variables in Linux fairly easily, and OS X. So I wonder if that's going to tie in.
Oh, you can totally
seamlessly.
do it easily in Windows too. You just gotta like open up Explorer, right click on my computer, go to
Yeah.
properties,
Environment
go
variables,
to
advanced.
advanced system variables.
Man, if your PowerShell's probably got like a set path variable. But I also see this as kind of being tied into the Docker future that we hear coming from Microsoft. So they are working on some sort of Docker Windows implementation, and I know Docker for Linux it kind of specifically relies on, or it doesn't rely on, but it's it plays really nicely with environment variables.
Coolness.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, here's one of my favorites: is that DI out of the box is a big part of the next version of Visual Studio and ASP.NET.
Yeah, and this is interesting. So now we've got Microsoft.framework.dependency injection, so a new namespace, and they say it's really minimalistic. And I tried to do a little bit of reading to see kind of what they were going for here, and it's as far as I could tell, it's basically just the generic reasons why you normally want dependency injection, which is kind of separation concerns and testing.
But the reason why I like this one so much, though, is that because this is a very good practice, right? That is now going to be core to the environment. Like dependency injection is a good practice. Why are you rolling your eyes?
I'm not rolling my eyes. I'm thinking. So there's arguments on both
I felt
sides.
the heat. Is that what it was?
No, there's arguments on both sides of it, right? Like you'll see some people say that if you get your dependency injection stuff, that like it's having to new up those objects for you every single time, right? If you don't use it in your code, there's a performance hit on that. So it boils down to what you're trying to use. So when you say it's a good practice, I agree to a certain extent. But on the flip side, if you're writing something that's just based purely off performance and you don't want to new up a bunch of objects that need to be garbage collected later, then that may not be the route to go. So I guess I didn't want the overall statement
Yeah,
to
but
be
again,
like,
we're talking about an ASP.NET, app,
Mhm.
and you're talking about for performance. So now you're only going to like wire in those services that you want, right?
we might. But I guess that's what I'm saying. Like if you start going crazy and you have a bunch of dependencies in there, you can start getting bloated,
Well,
right?
then your app's bloated and you're no longer performant anyway. So you have other problems. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Like if you're talking about from a performance point of view, this is still awesome because you can still only wire in the pieces that you want, and now you allow someone else to be able to replace those as needed in the future. So my only point is that I think that dependency injection in general is not a bad practice. Let's put it that way. And the fact that it's now wired in as a core component to your ASP.NET 5 app, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right now, I know like I think it was what is it, Fowler that famously has a discussion on why dependency injection is crap.
It's bad. Yeah, we brought it up on one of the previous episodes.
I think we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely done some dirty things with Ninject.
Well, that's so bringing that up. That's actually really cool. So they have their baked in one that they said is a fairly simple container that they have, but they said it's easy to swap in your Ninjax and those things as well. So
Yeah, structure map, whatever. And then again, like I said, I'm not. It doesn't matter that theirs is minimalist. It's just the fact that it's now
it's
core
there.
to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then this is where all the Java guys are gonna be like, well, we had Spring for ever.
Right.
So congratulations,
ever
.NET.
since the fall. But okay.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to that. Everything is NuGetted. And that's actually really kind of cool. So one of the cool pieces about ASPV Next is instead of having like everything, you really only have to include what you need.
Well, that depends though. Depends on what you're targeting, right?
Yes. If you're doing
If you're
the core,
targeting full CLR, then that's not a
Yes.
true statement.
yes.
Yep.
If you're doing the new watered down core, then at that point everything's like a NuGet package that you bring in, and it's really kind of cool because when you're going to include these, you have IntelliSense, so that when you're trying to include something, it will automatically link into the NuGet library, and it'll even do versioning, which
So
is really nice.
I guess I kind of skipped ahead then, by that statement though. So just for clarification, there are now going to be 3 different runtimes that this is supporting, right? One is the full .NET CLR. This is the CLR that you've come to know and love, unless you're a Java developer. And this is the one you're used to. Everything is there. It's all in the GAC, and you have hell with the GAC.
yes,
They tried to solve the DLL hell problem, and I guess it didn't happen.
it didn't really happen. Yeah.
Now, so then there's the core CLR, also known as the cloud optimized runtime. And this is the version that you're talking about, Alan, where you only get the things that you specifically request, and they are brought in as NuGet packages. So, for example, if you want, I don't know, give me something. If you want
Caching.
MVC,
I don't know.
you got to bring in.
Yep.
You got to bring it in, right? You're not getting any of those types that you're used to getting for free, like I don't know,
System.web,
list or
right.
generics or whatever.
All of it. Yeah.
You're not getting those for free now.
You have to include the library and then bring it in, which, I mean, some will argue that it makes things a little bit more complicated, but it also keeps your app a lot more lightweight, right?
And and it also keeps it all together, which I like because that means
Yes.
you can copy the whole folder. You don't have to worry
now
about
we're
the
totally
GAC,
skipping ahead.
what's you don't have to worry about what's installed, what's not. And I think that's another kind of move towards this Dockerified future.
Right. So again, if you're doing the core CLR, then you can install that CLR side by side with your app. So now you don't have to worry about system-wide .NET updates affecting your application.
It's awesome.
And that's
So
key.
you can update each application independently as needed.
And you may not even ever have to update those applications. That's really the key, right? Like you could
Well,
have 3
I'm not
going
to say that though. I mean, security hacks, they happen all the time.
Security,
so you're going to have to update your .NET version.
but it doesn't affect any of the others. And I guess that was the key, right? Like if you have 10 applications on there, one's running 4.5, one's running 4.
The scenario
or 5.
that you got to worry about is that, like, and I'm sure developers around the world have been in this scenario where there's some legacy app that the original, contractor that wrote it 10 years ago has left, and this thing is still running, and nobody quite knows how it works, but it still gets the job done. But we can't change anything on that system,
Right.
because this mission critical app is still needed.
And it's the only app on that server.
Yeah. So now when someone says, well, hey, but it's running on .NET 2.0, we need to upgrade that. There's all kinds of security patches out there, right? That's problematic in that scenario. Now going forward though with this one, because the .NET version can be installed side by side with the app, it's no longer an issue. If you can update only the apps that you want to update.
Yeah, it's all sandboxed, which is excellent.
So just to wrap up the different runtimes, the third one is the cross-platform CLR. Now, let me put an asterisk on that, okay? Because technically Microsoft hasn't developed this yet.
They said the preview's coming out soon.
Yeah, I believe them.
I actually do in this case because this is probably a huge selling point. And if they fall flat,
here's why I believe them. This is not your daddy's Microsoft.
that's a good point.
right.
That's a good point.
The Microsoft
Bomber's my daddy.
the Microsoft right now, this is not the Microsoft that we grew up with, that we knew, right? That used to always be, well, it's got to run on Microsoft. It's got to support this Microsoft specific platform, right? They are way more open about things that they're doing now and supporting, and it's because they were forced into it. It's not because they chose that they wanted to. They would love to have their monopoly back if they could.
There's that whole consistent with reality thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt that they will, and here's the reason why. Because right now the cross-platform comes at the cost of relying on mono.
Yep.
So there's no way that you're going to convince me that Microsoft would want to be beholden to someone else reverse engineering their APIs so that it could run on Linux or OS X. So I suspect that they will come out with one, but it's just a matter of when.
Yep.
Just real quick, I wanted to wrap up. We talked about NuGet. We kind of went off on a tangent there, but wanted to mention that because of NuGet, it's really easy to kind of specify your version, in a file there. So if you want to say, I'm fine with anything, then you can do that. Or if you want to set a specific version, you can configure that as well. So that's really nice.
All done through IntelliSense if you're in Visual Studio 2015.
So, man, we were skipping all around because one point I wanted to wrap up with the cross-platform was that if you caught what I was saying, that means that there's the flexibility to be able to swap out CLRs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
CLR vendors, right? Java has had this for a while. Like if you IBM would have their own version of the runtime. Oracle had their own version, right? It was like, whoever you want to use. And wasn't that like the whole lawsuit between Google and Oracle was that, Oracle was claiming that they had, reinvented. Maybe I'm remembering that one wrong, but
I know they got sued for using Java without paying licensing fees, but I don't remember how deep that went.
I thought it was because they reconstructed,
or
they were accused of
The whole API, yeah.
reconstructing it.
But yeah, that is cool because you could really, because it's open source, you could basically take the CLR and make your own, fork it, do something. So
Not that I'm gonna, but
no,
it's
I'm
cool.
not.
Well, but I mean, I guess where I'm thinking about this though is that like maybe you have some specific use case, right? So like one of the cool things that's actually come out is that, and by come out I mean like that people have done, announcements that have been made is that someone actually had this thing running on Raspberry Pi.
That's really cool.
Right?
Yeah, that is awesome.
So what if you wanted to make your own CLR that was optimized for some kind of small, Internet of Things type device, right? And maybe you want to make the instruction set as small and as simple as possible, right? Then that's
So
a reason
embedded
why.
programming, yeah.
Yep, you're
But
onto
and
something.
you don't want to, for whatever reason, maybe because of bureaucracy, maybe Microsoft's too slow to move forward or whatever, and you're like, you know what, we got this, we can do it on our own. We're going to release the mini .NET CLR.
That is
right?
kind of cool if you think about it, because most of distributed or embedded type devices right now run Java because it was, easy to do that kind of stuff. So now you might actually see .NET things running on, like you said, the Internet of Things.
Like my
type
router
devices.
might be running ASP.
That's kind of cool, right?
Here's another idea. Just brainstorming things off the top. But like, what's that? What's the Android phone that? That was secure. Like everything about it was secure.
Oh man, I
Right?
don't know. Did it ever get popular? I know they were working
No.
at
What was it called?
Something
The
black.
black
The
phone?
black, yeah, something.
But what if you wanted to have a secure CLR where like everything about it was, anything that was written to memory was going to be encrypted. I don't know how you would do this. I'm not, claiming to be the cryptography security expert to do that, but I'm just brainstorming like ideas why it might be valuable to have others developing the CLR, right?
Yeah, and it was the black phone is what it was called. So we'll leave a link.
So
in
if
the
you
show
if
notes.
you had like for ATM purposes, and you're like, this other company developed the secure.net CLR where nothing is written in the clear, whether it be to in memory, whether it be to disk, whatever.
That is cool. Yeah, I mean, it opens up a world of possibilities, and it might actually spread .NET a little bit more, right? Which, I mean, I would be a fan of.
Yeah.
And also, my favorite part is just cheaper hosting.
Oh, no doubt, right?
So, yeah, a couple extra dollars a month.
Throw it on a Linux box. Oh man, it's beautiful. I can't wait. What the next one was, you can run an IIS or you can run self-hosted in your own process. That's beautiful because previously you were tied to a Windows machine.
Yep.
We've already mentioned that it's going to be cross-platform, which means that it needs to be able to run another process other than IIS because it doesn't exist on OS X and Linux and all that. So that's excellent. I mean, you can literally have your self-deploying, application that you just run.
No IIS. I, for one, will not miss IIS.
I kind of like IIS, but whatever.
I feel like right-clicking, I guess.
Now, one thing that I haven't looked into this though, because so the self-hosted one that comes with that you would run on like a Windows is maybe for obvious reasons not the same one that you would run on OS 10, for example.
Right.
Right. So those are built off of. I think the self-hosted one for Windows is built off of HTTP sys. And I forget what the one for OS 10 is based off of, but like basically like in your config, one will be called Web, and then for OS 10 it'd be called Kestrel that you're going to run to execute that. But I wonder, like, if it may already be pluggable with this, and I haven't taken the time to investigate, but like if you could maybe in the future, if there's an Apache version or an Nginx version, that you'd be able to specify like, hey, I want to run on this particular. I imagine that would be coming, but I have no idea.
It's awesome you brought that up because one of the things that's key about this is supposedly the HTTP process is supposed to be a lot faster on this because you can kind of pick and choose what goes into it. And I'm probably jumping ahead again. But
it's because there's so much exciting things to talk about.
Right.
what I'm curious about is, like as soon as Nginx came out, like benchmarks galore of how it destroys Apache. And, Light HTTPD, also same thing. Like, I'm wondering how this is going to stack up against those in their own lightweight processes. So, I don't know. I'm really kind of excited to see how this goes. Because, again, to Joe's point, this could mean much cheaper hosting, right? You're not having to run Windows to run your website, which cuts your cost tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
Could be huge, and then, but you can code it in C#. Like, is that the best of like?
Yep.
Dude, that's awesome.
I actually just bought $hosting.net, so I'm ready.
And if you didn't, it's gone now.
Yeah.
Although, if you go to our site, there is some, inexpensive .NET hosting that you could, use. You just click on that link and, for phenomenal, and there you go.
That is a good point. All right. So our next one is the project structure, right?
Yep. And so that's the kind of second part. So first we talked about like runtime and basically the kind of changes that were involved there.
excited about.
But these are the ones that are coming up that are going to affect my day-to-day life. So I'm excited about this. These are the things that actually change what I do.
I'm going to blow your mind here.
Mind blown.
Do you know the most... wait. Before I say it, go ahead and intro what is different about this structure.
We'll go slowly. It's JSON-based, right?
You're going too slow for me. My excitement level is...
Which
It's waning.
it's there's a KProj project file now. K stands for Katana.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Project Katana, it's related.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
The K, from everything I've heard, the K has nothing to do with katana. That's just coincidental.
Okay, what's that have to do with it?
I'm pretty sure. Well, at least in my mind,
I just won that argument.
no. Actually, I honestly have heard that it wasn't katana, but I could be wrong. I'm willing. Hey, you know what, dear listener, please write in, prove me wrong, leave some comments on the site, email some feedback, tweet us, whatever you prefer to pound me. If you want it to be public, then Twitter or feedback on the site. But I'm pretty sure, like from what I heard, what I read, it was not katana. But what I like to believe, the reason why, because everything about this now is going to be K. So there's the KVM, you're going to run commands, you do K and then run or K build or K whatever. What I like to think is that whoever was in charge of the project, he or she had a name that began with K, Kenny, Keith, whatever it might be. And when they weren't working at Microsoft,
Kiefer.
Their rapper pseudonym.
Get on the ground.
Their rapper pseudonym was Special K.
Oh,
And this
there
is
you
in
go.
reference to them. So, make it real, Special K.
Very nice. And let us know what the K means. And we're not talking about clustering. Cha.
Donuts?
All right, so project is a JSON file. I'm actually excited about that because I don't like the project files as are.
Yep.
But
It's
the
annoying.
reason I'm excited about it has nothing to do with it about it being JSON. It's the fact that you don't have every single file in there.
Right?
Oh, man,
No
let me skip
more-
ahead. Before you guys steal mine,
What?
you were about to read mine. You were about to steal it.
That's what you get for disagreeing with me about the K.
No way, man. The most exciting
more-
thing about this, no more merge conflicts. No more CS Proj merge conflicts because you and 3
Hallelujah.
other guys all made a change to it and added new files. And now Git's like, wait a minute, one of these has to go.
Man, it's so killer. Like, instead of all your files listed, which is why our merge conflicts come in play, you can literally say, hey, include star.cs.
Have you ever had to like? Have you ever been in a situation where you like actually had to read line by line
Oh, yeah.
a CS Proj file?
It's horrible.
Many
and
times.
everything's GUID based, and then it's like, a file is set to a GUID value, and then that GUID value is included in as another GUID value. And before you realize it, you're like 3 or 4 GUID level, references deep, and you're like, wait a minute, what GUID was this again? What did this mean?
Dude, that is the worst.
So now this is where all the Java guys are going to go, wait a minute, we already have that.
Yeah. Boo.
Because now the project structure is just going to be like whatever, it's file system based. If it's in that folder, we'll take it, we'll compile it. You might not admit it, but we're going to do it. But you can exclude those.
You can
exclude items if you want.
You can exclude files. You can exclude folders. You can include, asterisk files. You can. It is the way that you would expect things would work in a sane world. Yes. So it's about time.
No more
That's all I
like
can say
right
here.
click, add to project, include existing.
How in the world did it take this long to do this? Like, seriously, why has this been like this for this long?
I think someone there really likes GUIDs. You know what it is? There's probably someone at Microsoft who's like getting royalty checks off of GUID generators. Like they came up with the intellectual
penny
capital on
link.
how to do it. They have the patent on it, and every time someone uses it, they get some money.
All
That's
right.
just my guess.
What's the solution folder source thing?
That's what we just talked about.
Well, it's a little bit different. There's basically a source folder where all your kind of source code goes, and there's other folders for things like static content and stuff like that. So
Cool.
So now, like we say all that, but now it's like, didn't we exactly go against this exact thing in Java like a few episodes, many episodes back, about how you had to go like 18,000 directories deep because you were into like your source
com dot
dot company dot subdomain dot project
but
dot.
it looks like your folder structure stays the same for your solution. It's just the management of those assets now is easier.
yeah, and so I do like this, and it also makes it easier to say like only serve stuff out of this folder and not necessarily the project root, which has your config files and stuff.
I mean, think about applications right now where you do builds and it generates all these files, and then all of a sudden you go to do a web deploy and those files aren't there and it chokes about it. Like, you can easily manage that now.
Oh yes.
It's going to be beautiful. All right,
My
so
get ignore just got a lot easier.
Seriously, it's going to match your project file just about.
Yep. And there are ways to like exclude files and things like that, but I don't see that happening a whole lot.
Nah, just include it. Anything. I'll tell you how we'll exclude stuff. We'll just comment it out.
Yeah.
We'll just comment out that file.
No,
Let it compile. It'll compile to nothing.
Control K C.
please don't do this. All right. So we have a dependency folder for packages.
Yeah, it's the next couple words that scare me on this one, though. So I get dependency folders. I get the whole packages directory. It's kind of invisible now in Visual Studio, but they're talking about actually having that show up. But what scares me is NPM and Bower. So they're talking about different kinds of package managers. And this is a good thing. Just I know those are JavaScript related.
Oh man, this was actually like one of the things that I thought was kind of humorous about this, and this is where I was talking about earlier. I don't even remember what the reference was, but I was talking about like a comment that I had that's coming up was that when I was talking about like them bringing in everything, that standard tools that other communities are using, because now it's like, oh, you want some package managers? Oh, well, you better be careful what you ask for, because we're going to bring you some package managers.
Yeah, and this is a really good thing, like who's doing websites now without JavaScript, right? So you're probably using, some sort of package management on that side anyway, but now you just don't have to kind of go out of your way or install plugins or do any weird stuff, it's just kind of built in for you.
Yeah, so not only do you have NuGet to worry about, now you got NPM, you got Bower, you got Grunt. I mean, you got your package managers to deal with.
Well, Grunt's a task runner.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Okay, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, but at least they're moving into the next century, right? Like they're not depending on postbacks anymore. You can actually have JavaScript stuff.
Yeah, there's Chocolatey and OneGit. Don't forget those.
Oh man. All right.
Yeah.
Static files in the www root folder.
Pretty cool.
Yes. Super excited about that. Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like. So this one's brought to you by NPR, and so there's static files in the www folder.
Yawn.
How do you feel about that, Joe?
I'm slightly more excited about command line scaffolding.
All right, let's hear about it.
Scaffolding is kind of cool for demos, but I don't know many people that really use it.
My
It's not
next
very
one
practical.
is way more interesting than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Scaffolding is useful.
In the beginning, but it's like how long until some project has some sort of weird quirk that doesn't
Agreed.
let you really use scaffolding? It always happens it's like day 2.
But hold up. That's one of the beauties of C# that we've pointed out before, though, is you can have the partial classes, right? So as long as your scaffolding builds partial classes, then maybe you can regen them all the time, right?
Yep. I think it generates HTML and all sorts of stuff. It's kind of like, the whole like Ruby blog in 10 minutes, thing from like 15 years ago.
Gotcha.
So that's cool.
The next one though is about to blow your mind.
I don't like it.
They're bringing. Hold on now. They're bringing READMEs into the now.
I like READMEs, but it's got the wrong file extension. It's a HTML file.
Yeah, it should be a dot.
MD.
MD.
I don't even know
down.
why. Why do you guys put this one in there?
I think that was probably copied and pasted from somewhere.
I don't
Right.
even know. Like, really? Who? Why? One of you guys put this in here to talk about, and this is like, of everything in here, this one's probably the least.
Oh, come on. You're not excited about that?
No, I don't know if you recognize by my sarcasm.
Well, actually, I do like this because, like, in my GitHub projects, I tend to put a README file because I want it to show up, in GitHub correctly. But now it's like this weird, README.md file that's mixed in with C# files, which I don't like.
Yeah, it's your markdown file.
Yeah,
Yeah, but now it's going to be your HTML file.
and it's going to be at a higher level than my source code.
Yeah, I don't know.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty lame. Nobody's really excited about that.
No.
You got to README by default.
This is not exciting. Okay. I mean, if they were going to do this, then I agree. It should have been a markdown file, not an HTML file.
But you can WYSIWYG it.
You just haven't seen a good README file. That's what this is
I've
about.
written some good README files, but I did it in markdown, not HTML. This is crazy. I don't even know why one of you guys put this in here.
You
This
could
is-
have your build instructions inside of your
whichever
project.
one of you put this in here should feel bad. You're a bad person and you should feel
I
bad.
think Outlaw did it,
Get
actually.
blame. Yep.
Get
MO.
blame. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think that's available in the Google Doc. That's fantastic.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's take a moment here because, we've said this before, but, to everyone who has already taken the time to leave us a review on iTunes and, or Stitcher and, all that, we really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. And if you haven't, we would greatly appreciate it if you would. You can go to www.codingblocks.net/review
or reviews.
and pick your platform of choice, and you can go there to leave us a review. Like I said, it really means a lot to us. It helps other people to find us, so it adds to the credibility, and it really means a lot. And spread the word. If you got some friends that aren't already listening to the show, be sure to tell them about it. Let them listen in. Hey, if nothing else, it will give you guys something to discuss during lunch so that you can say how wrong I was. And that could be entertaining in and of itself.
It could. The whole case situation will come back around.
Oh, my God.
Yep. So,
Awesome.
all right. Now,
It was Special K.
What's next on the agenda here? So, again, I think we already said, once you have this thing with the Core CLR, that you can now host it anywhere.
Yeah, I think we're just kind of talking about some of the more important things. We went through kind of a list before, so we wanted to call it things that we're actually excited about and highlight them.
Yeah, I mean,
Like the Project README.
dude, the seriously cheap hosting along with this, but being able to code in C# is fantastic, because right now, if you want to host on Linux, you're probably coding in PHP or
And we're
Perl
all on
or
Macs
Python.
right now, so it'd be nice
Yeah.
to be able to stay in that experience. I prefer Macs,
Oh, hold up a second. Did we even?
So okay. So if we want to discuss this cross-platform runtime,
Hold on. Before we go, what else do we have? God, we have a long document.
yeah. Well, let's get into the cross-platform because I don't know if you
Let's
guys
do
have
that.
played with this yet, but
No.
it is let me put it to you like this, okay? Like if you want to develop on your Mac, right? ASP.NET VNext app, and you have, let's say, just a clean Mac. Let's go over the list of things that you need to do to get that Mac set up.
Let's do that.
Oh my God. All right. First, you're going to have to install Xcode. Wait half your lifetime for that to download, because I think that's like 1.8 gig or something like
It's
that.
big.
And then every stinking time there's an iOS update, guess what you're getting a new copy of?
But it's not
right.
1.8 gigs anymore. They actually did cut that back down because it used to bring the whole thing every time. It doesn't do that
Oh,
anymore.
are they using the cloud optimized runtime?
They,
so they could.
they must be.
All right, but you're going to need to. A key part of this is being able to use the command line tools that come along with Xcode. But in order to do that, you need to be sure to accept the license, and you can do all this by command line. Then, to make life easy on you, you're going to want to use Homebrew. If you're not already using Homebrew, it's another package manager. It's another tool that you could use to, like Chocolatey, to download things automatically and install them on your platform. Of which you're going to want to use that to install Mono and the KVM, which has now been renamed. So I think Special K, his rapper pseudonym, he must have gotten outvoted, because now it's the DNVM, right? So D for dot, N for net. So the .NET VM. So use Homebrew to install both of those. It'll do it all together for you. And then, if you don't already have Node, you're going to need to install the Node so that you can get the NPM. And then you're going to use NPM to install Yeoman and Grunt and Bower. And then...
Which Bower's another package manager.
Oh my
and
God.
Yeoman is as well.
Oh, my God. Well, Yeoman is a generator.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So now that you've got all that, what I had to do, I consistently, for some reason, I don't know why, but like every time I would run KVM, if I just restarted terminal inside of OS X, I would have to source my kvm.sh file every time. Every time. So now you want to build an app, right? So you could do, you could use Yeoman. So you could do like a yo space ASP.NET, and then it'll ask you, it'll bring up a prompt saying like, hey, which one of these do you want to do? Do you want to do an empty application? Do you want to do a console application? Do you want to do a web application? Whatever. So let's say you pick web application. So you pick web application, then you're going to do your KPM restore, then you're going to do your KPM build, then you're going to do your K space Kestrel to start the web server on OS 10, and you're going to get an exception. Too many open files. Or at least I did. You might be lucky enough that you didn't. So then I had to go dig around and find out, like, why am I getting this stupid exception? There's a bug in Mono, right? And this is another part of the reason why Microsoft will not want to be beholden to someone else to develop their runtime, or else this thing is not going to take off. But there was a bug in Mono. So what I had to do was, and this is the beauty of environment variables, right? I could just simply from the command line say export, and then there was this Mono managed watcher, just disable that, and I was done. Then I could start, run the Kestrel command again to start the web server. Now I could actually go into that, I could actually go into a browser, localhost, and see this generic application that I built.
Very cool.
But that's a lot of steps, to go from start to finish, right? To get you there, if you're on a clean Mac. But the beauty is, like, all of that except for the Xcode, right?
It was a one-time thing.
And
right?
except for the very end of launching this thing in a browser, everything else was command line. You can.
Well, that's like Java, though.
No, but like when you do when you use the Yeoman generator to generate the empty shell, of your web application, right? Like it's going ahead and creating all that structure for you, right? So then once that was done, then I could just go in and VI everything, and if I wanted to make any changes to it, I could just do it through VI. I could stay within terminal and do the whole thing, right? That's unheard of. A C# developer has never spoken those words before.
Nor would
that
they
he
want to.
stayed in a terminal and created an app from start to finish, and it worked.
All right, but hold on. Let's take a step back here. That's actually one of the reasons why C# developers like C#, because they have an IDE that does all that stuff for you, right?
But now I'm saying that you had the flexibility that, before, okay, sure, I'm sure there's some MS Build expert out there is like, hold on now, you could totally do this. You run an MS Build with 18,000 arguments, and I could totally do it. But now what I'm saying, though, is that they've simplified things, at least in my opinion, to where it was a lot easier. So I might have listed off, a dozen or more steps, but that was all it took. And the majority of them, with the first one of installing Xcode and the last one of actually viewing it in a browser, everything else, I probably could have curled it too if I wanted, or if I wanted to stay in command line to see it, I probably could have done something like that. So I thought that was kind of awesome. But
it is
to
cool.
your point, though, there is a Sublime plugin.
Yes. Now we're starting to get somewhere.
So you could, and Sublime is cross-platform. So if you wanted to, you could use Sublime to do your editing. And that plugin, there's IntelliSense now within Sublime for C#.
Yeah, and on top of it as well, and we'll have a link in the show notes, this guy that was doing it, he actually has inside Sublime where he's calling Kestrel to start things up from within Sublime. So you can actually, without having to go back and forth.
Oh, right.
So
you're speaking of Scott Allen.
No, this is Syed Ibrahim Hashimi.
It's really easy.
Oh, that
to
sounds easy.
Build things.
How you spell that?
Control
Is it like
B
it sounds?
to build. That's actually really easy to set up in Sublime. So
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing. So what all Outlaw said, yeah, it might take a little bit of time to get it up and running, but once you do, you're done at that point. You could edit it all within VI, which if you're crazy a little bit, you can. Or you can go into Sublime where they have fantastic templating and all that kind of stuff and actually be sane again. But you could now, in a decent, productive way, work on a Mac to code C#, which is fantastic.
Now here's one weird thing that I ran into too, and I don't know if I didn't bother to go look to see if this was like actually no, I did go look into this one. It was a known bug, but if you so now that you're running Kestrel, right, and let's say you want to stay in the command line, and you're like, hey, that's awesome. Well, let me just shut down this web server. Oh, which button is that? Is that Command C, Control C? Wait, Apple Q. Wait, why is this thing not stopping? Escape? Break? What do I? Which one of these stupid buttons do I press? Right? It's the enter key. Yeah. So there's actually like an open. If you go find the repository, the GitHub repository, there's actually an open request to make it more clear that the enter key will quit the Kestrel web server once you start it.
Awesome.
Right now, to that effect, though, what at least from my own experience, if you pressed anything else, like in all those examples where I was like Control C, Command C, escape, all that kind of crap, I had to kill it by doing like, the old fashioned Unix way, kill -9 and find the PID that it was running under, because it wasn't responding to anything else.
Oh no.
I mean, the web server was still working, but as far as like the ability to stop the web server by use of the enter key, it wasn't working for that.
Interesting.
So hopefully that'll get sorted out at some point.
So
Your mileage may vary.
he actually did, though, we saw the website, we saw proof that he had on his Mac running an OS X, he had an ASP VNext application running.
Well, and I also did, I didn't mention this one too, or show you this one either, but I also did the command line too, because like that was one of the things I was more excited about too, is like from a server side point of view, I was like, hey, think about like how many shell scripts have you written in your life, or little scripts, PowerShell scripts, Bash shell scripts, Perl scripts, whatever, to do like little tasks on the server side, right? Now you can add C# to your arsenal of things that you could do on any platform to solve those little problems.
Yeah, that's
right.
kind of cool.
So that was another one of the things I did was I used the Yeoman generator. Let's bring up on OS 10 a C# console application, and let me play around with that. And of course I used VI to do all the editing because I'm insane. But but the one thing though that I haven't done, and this was originally like my ultimate, one of the things I was setting out to do with it was, like, if you think about this, like, what's the long-term, your ideal goal here? Your what's the ultimate, fantasy about being able to work on this cross-platform?
Write once, deploy everywhere.
No, man.
That's
what
mine.
are you thinking, dude?
That's
Windows everywhere?
No, God, no. You guys are crazy. Listen, here it is. You are at the office on your company provided PC. You do some work there, right? And now you're like, hey, I'm at home and I'm on my Mac. And, it'd be really cool is if I could just do that job from here on this Mac. And so let me just clone the repository, do some work, and I can keep working from home. I don't have to go I can go into the office a little later or whatever, right? That's the cross-platform development.
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
Right, is one thing that was key. And I haven't gotten to that part yet. I had originally set out to do it and then developed an app in Visual, in the CTP, which what does that even stand for? But whatever.
Capture the protocol.
Yeah, whatever. Capture the packet. Whatever the latest version of it, I think it was like preview 6 of Visual Studio 2015.
Yep.
So I developed that on a PC, and then the idea was, well, let me just copy this whole structure over to my Mac and then compile it. So I didn't do that just because I was just time constraints. But what my suspicion is, and this is unproven yet.
CTP, Community Technical Preview.
Oh, right.
There you go.
Yeah, so it just rolls right off the tongue.
There it is.
My suspicion, though, is that the only thing that would be required to make that cross-platform work would be modifications to the project.json to specify specifically like OS 10 commands, right? So when you look at the project.json, one of the stanzas that's in there is a commands section. So when I said K space Kestrel and it would start it, that's because specifically in the project.json, there's a Kestrel command that's telling it what the web server should be, right? And what URL it should respond to, what port it should respond to, or you can exclude some of that if you wanted to, but that's how that's working, right? And if you're on a PC and you want to do the self-hosted, right? Like I said before, you would do a K space web, and that's because in that project.json, there's a web configuration section within or line within the commands object structure that specifies the Microsoft.ASP.NET hosting, and then includes server URL. And
Is
port
there a way to
information.
do a switch in there based off what platform you're on? I mean, that would be the key, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like you wouldn't need to. You could have both. You could have both commands
and it would know how to run the correct
in the
one.
project.json, and then depending on what environment, you would just say, "Hey, let me do k.web because I'm on my PC. Hey, I'm on my Mac. Let me do k-kestrel." So I haven't tried it, but I think that's all that's necessary. That's my gut.
What Alan, I think, is saying is like he wants to run K and have it figured out.
Right.
Well, but no, that's not how this works though. Because K is more like K more like Git, right? Like
It's
the
the
Git,
command.
You
K
can't
do
just
it.
run Git by itself and
Right.
do something. You got to give it a command.
K
Right?
make.
And so you're deciding what those commands are in your project JSON. So if you wanted to have, now this would be a gross way to do it. I suppose you could make a command saying like, run, for example, and have that dependent, have the syntax of that different per each platform.
But
then
we're
you wouldn't-
overcomplicating things there anyways.
Well, worse, you wouldn't be able to commit that.
Right.
Because then any Windows user's command is going to override yours.
But
So
you're
you'd
saying
wanna
you
keep
can have
those
multiple
separate.
commands in there, and you just know which ones to run based off what platform you're doing
Yeah,
it on.
absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
yeah.
So I want to keep playing with that though, but I think that's all that would be necessary. That's my gut suspicion is that's all that's necessary. But I'll find out.
So your takeaway is you'd like to be able to continue writing the same application across multiple platforms.
I'm saying cross development is just as
Cross-development.
important as cross runtime.
I actually the host anywhere type thing is exciting to me, and that's actually pretty cool. I don't know how much I would do that, but so the next one that we have marked down is there's no more worrying about the GAC, and that's huge.
The
That
global assembly cache, right?
yes,
And what they used to be is basically a
I thought it
place
was
for your.
that sound that I made whenever like somebody mentioned there was a problem with a version. I'm like, oh god.
Well, it's kind of both. So
that's
basically-
what eventually happened every time.
yeah, and it's this really convenient folder that has basically shared assemblies that different programs can use. But the problem is that you don't really know what other people have, and so one person may have a DLL in their GAC, and the next person doesn't. So you kind of commit, it works on your machine, the next person gets it, and it's not in the GAC, and they've got to try to hunt down some DLL from really dodgy websites.
Yeah, and then you deploy it to X number of servers, and half of them have it. Some of
Yep.
them have a different version. They don't.
And
line up.
originally though, this was intended to be, that
The
side by
fix.
side
Yeah.
deployment, because originally the idea was, hey, we'll look first next to the executable, and if we can find the DLL there that we're looking for, then we don't have to go any further. But if we need to, then we can go searching for, in a global namespace and to find it, and that's what the GAC was supposed to
I
be.
mean, it's almost the same type thing as like if you go over to somebody else's house and you expect them to have shoes that fit you, right? Like, I mean, that's really kind of what this is. So let's think about it, right? Like, the GAC was the
Why
whole
is it
purpose.
you
was,
guys keep bringing up these.
I'm putting
the ones
clothes
with
on.
the
I'm putting clothes on.
Like, what is it like? I am not coming over to your
No,
houses.
but it's just like that, right? Like you wouldn't go over to somebody else's house bare feet and be like, "Hey, you got a size 11 there?" Right? That's not going to happen. And that's kind of what the whole GAC was, "Hey, you can run 10 different versions of the same thing, right? Like if you've got this Newtonsoft package, you can run all 10 versions of it. But let's say that you put your application out there and they just didn't happen to have the 11th. Well, now you're messed up. And so that was the problem with the GAC all along is they had to install these things for you to be able to use them. It was good intent, but at least now you just bundle what you want and you send it across, and that's huge. So,
So, GAC, you did your best. I appreciate you. Goodbye.
yes. So we just went
It's
over
not gone forever.
No, it's not going.
Don't say goodbye. This isn't
Yeah,
goodbye.
we're talking ASP.
Like I said
5
before, if you're
specific,
using
but-
the full .NET CLR, you're still using the GAC.
You can. You don't have to.
yeah,
If you're
I
using the
avoid it.
full CLR,
You
you're
don't
still
have
using
to.
the GAC.
You still
For-
don't have to use the GAC today, even with the full CLR. You can still bundle your dependencies. It's just that a lot of people
No
relied
one
on the
bundles
GAC.
system in with their app.
Correct. Okay,
Okay.
fair enough. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
fair
if
enough.
you're using
That's a good
the
point.
full CLR, you're still using the GAC. So
Okay,
don't say
yeah.
goodbye just yet.
I feel like that should be a meme. We need to get a picture of your face, like looking really intense, saying that.
Saying what? Don't say
That.
It's not goodbye.
No one bundles system.
He did have an intense look, didn't he?
You did the whole Gandalf like, you shall not pass, but no one bundle system.
That's awesome.
Oh
I feel a meme
man.
coming.
Oh God.
A meme.
Oh God. A Mimi?
A meme. Wait, what was it? I am Gur. You know, there's always that. Imager.
Oh.
Yes. All right.
That was not mine.
Too clever.
All right. So set the KRE runtime info. What's
So
that?
so I want to go to one of my favorites though.
Wait. What's this one? What's set the KRE runtime info?
I don't know. That was one of Joe's.
It's basically just specifying the CLR again, which we've talked about quite a bit.
Okay. We're done with the CLR. All right.
Yeah, and then well, one point that I did want to make about this side-by-side.net that nobody has mentioned though is that now for the first time finally upgrading .net on your server can become even more of a pain in the
Wait, how's it work? It's a copy paste.
because now you got to do it like, if you have 64 apps, you got to do it 64 times.
No, I don't have 64 apps.
Well, it depends on what your server is, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that's an interesting take. Hey, but you could always write your script. and
Well,
see
this
sharp
is the
and go
dark
over
side.
there.
This is the dark side of me that's thinking
Oh, God.
where's the negatives here, right? Like everybody's all, rainbows and kittens about this, side-by-side.net thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, come on now.
Yeah, it's kind of
This-
interesting. So if you're a hosting company, rather than being like, hey guys, tonight at midnight we're installing the latest patch, it's more like, you guys figure it out.
Yeah, it's almost like Linux is handled nowadays, right? Like you got all these VMs out there, right? It's like, oh, you patch your own stuff. That's kind of what this is
Well,
like.
that's not exactly what I was going with, though. But I mean, I kind of see where your point is, like them putting the onus on you. But I just meant like,
Yeah,
let's
have-
say that you have some server out there and you have 64 apps on
You
it.
gotta update 'em
now
all.
it's not a matter of, well, they all support the latest version of .NET, so let me just install this patch and done. Now it's, oh crap, they're all side by side.
Dude,
I
somebody's
gotta
gonna.
deploy-
There's going to be a tool for that. There will have to be a tool for that.
But you're right. There's no more, Patch Tuesday kind of taking care of that little stuff, right?
Yeah,
if you got a
now
specific
it's-
version specified, then how does that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, specifically to Patch Tuesday, it's going to be interesting to see like how do security deployments get handled.
They
to
don't.
Alan's point about the tool that'll do this, like how is this going to happen?
Yeah, there will have to be some
like is
way.
the system? I mean, this is no longer dependent on like a GAC or anything like that. So
Right.
it's just a file system. So I don't see anything that's going to know that, oh, you have three different versions of .NET already installed on the system or not installed. Let's be careful with the wording here.
Yeah.
You have three
Existing.
different .NET files
Existing.
on the system.
Yeah.
I don't know. how
There's
that's gonna
going
work.
to be new positions at every company that are just PowerShell scripters that will be copying files all the time. I think Joe just applied something.
One of the cool things though that we didn't mention, did we say this though? Like that, the core CLR, also known as the cloud optimized runtime, is super small.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tiny. I think 11 megabytes.
Yeah, compared to over 200 for the full.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
pretty amazing.
CLR.
And that's
So-
why like the Raspberry Pi thing is even possible, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internet of Things. It
Well,
definitely seems like they're.
It's
edging
possible,
towards it.
but it's not by any means usable. I mean, like that one that I was specifically referring to
Yeah.
was slow.
Okay, well,
And that's why I was saying like maybe somebody else might want to come out with a CLR of their own that's more specific to embedded environments. Who knows?
but still made possible because it's being shrunk down to just the core necessities.
So I wanted to bring up something that I haven't heard anyone talk about this one before. From any videos I've watched, things I've read, but I thought it was kind of interesting. So because I do, okay, so let's go back to current Visual Studio, 2013 and before environments, right? Where you could have build configurations for different environments. So by default, you're getting a debug and a release, but you might have ones for different CPU architectures, whatever. You might have some that you're setting different directives. I can't even think of all the different examples why you might, but
Right.
there's a bunch of reasons out there where you might have multiples. So I got into a habit of I like to do batch builds, just like before I you know, push up my changes to the remote repository, just to make sure that like everything's still good. Like I didn't break some other obscure build that I'm not using, right? So I got into this habit a long time ago of just doing the batch builds just to make sure like every version build's fine, right? And now with this, the new Roslyn compiler that you were referring to earlier, that where like as soon as you're saving the file, it's building it. It's building all the versions.
Oh, very cool.
So if you want, and by that what I mean is like, so now when you look into your references folder, right? Remember how you used to see like a whole bunch of different DLLs named out by namespace? So you might see like system dot, give me one. System.math or whatever, right? You would see all of these different ones specified out, right? You don't see that now. What you see right away is you're going to see the frameworks that you're targeting.
Oh, nice.
Right? So if you're supporting the full-on CLR, you're going to see ASP.NET 5.0. If you're supporting Core CLR, the cloud optimized runtime, you're going to see ASP.NET Core 5.0, right? And now when you do your saves, it's compiling both of those versions. Now, when I mentioned about the batch build, you still have your batch build. So I haven't bothered to look to see if like both release and debug get built, which is really the reason why I do that. Yeah. But it is building both of those targets for you, right? So that then brought up the point that it was like, well, wait a minute, is it doing the like what if you needed to have something that was specific to one platform but not the other? So in other words, maybe I want to write this application where when you're running on the full CLR, I can use generics or Link. Let's say Link, for example. Mm-hmm. But for if you're running on Core, the cloud optimized CLR, I don't want to have that dependency be required, and so I can just do this one call and be done with it, right? So there's these the compiler directives are back, right? We set it back to C, regular C.
I don't know why we're doing that.
I don't know why you're not with me here on the excitement level, because you can pound if stuff.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I was actually making a joke like that wasn't. Don't take me serious there. That wasn't like I didn't. I mean,
yeah, I got a little sad there. I thought you were for reals.
Yeah, I did too.
No, totally wasn't for reals. Well, okay. So in C, we had to write our own bugs. In C++, we can inherit them.
Nice.
So now we fast forward to C#. Now we can still do like those pound if directives. So you could say like pound if ASP.NET 5.0 and then do your core. Yeah, I'm sorry. Do your full CLR specific code. And then pound end if, or you could do pound if ASP.NET Core 5.0, which would target the core CLR. So obviously the compiler is going to be smart enough to know like, okay, which one of these need to be targeted. So that's crazy. The first time I see some code that's going to have that crap in it, I'm going to be a little bit upset.
That's code smart.
Like it better be because you're writing something that absolutely requires being cross-platform. That's the only reason why I could see that you would want to use those directives.
That's insane.
Reject that pull request.
So to finish up on a few of these here, one of the other things was previous versions of apps would just automatically work on the framework without any modifications. That's a promise that they made. Hopefully that is true. And
well.
No, that's what they said. If
there was something about routing, I thought though.
They say that they will work without any modifications. That's if you choose to run on the newer platform. Now that doesn't mean that you're going to the core CLR. If you do that, you have to change a lot of stuff. However, if you're just trying to run on the full .NET framework, it'll just plop in and work.
I could have sworn there was something. There was a gotcha If I remember correctly, I don't. I'll never find it now.
If
But
we
I
do,
could
it'll
have
be in the show
sworn
notes.
that there was at least one scenario where, and I thought it had to do something weird like MVC routing or
It would make sense because it's unified now, but that's what they say. That's even one of their bullet points directly off ASP.NET/vNext. Another thing, you can play with this stuff right now. You can go, if you want Visual Studio, the CTP 6, which was Community Technology Preview 6, you can do that. We recommend doing that in a VM, though, because it is new and it's not ready for production yet. So if you do that, put it on something that doesn't necessarily need to be, ready to go. Did you find it?
yes, I actually did find it. I can't believe I did. Okay, so there's a blurb at the end of there's an ASP.NET page that has an overview of vNext, and at the very end there's this little blurb that says MVC6 and SignalR3 apps use the new HTTP pipeline, so they are not compatible with apps that use system.web.
Right. That's using
So-
a different CLR. That's
It
using
doesn't
the
even mention it's not even talking about CLR here. It says that those use the new pipeline, right? So it's implying a CLR there, but they are not compatible with apps that use system.web.
Well, that's fine because we were talking about old apps. Would
To
just plop-
upgrade, it says to upgrade existing apps. Yeah, but we were talking about existing apps running on this, right?
Right.
So it says to upgrade existing apps to MVC6 or SignalR, you must create a new project through Visual Studio 2015 and then port your code to the new project. And when porting, you'll need to modify the unsupported code. So
But that's if you're upgrading your project, though. If you just want to bring it straight over, you can do it without any changes, right? Because what you just said was key. If you want to upgrade it to run on MVC6 and all
SignalR3,
that,
yeah.
then you have to touch it. Otherwise, you can just move it straight over. It runs.
Well, I mean, what are you talking? What are you calling support then? Are you telling like if I just leave my old legacy app running and install the next version of .NET?
Yeah,
Because that's not what I meant.
no, that's what they were saying. Like if you have a new server set up that's running the .NET framework or whatever, you can bring this thing straight over without any.
No, I think what they're
modifications.
talking about is like, can I just take my legacy app and open it up in 2015 and compile it and it work? And they're saying yes, that'll work, except in these scenarios.
That's if you're bringing it in 2015. If you don't want to do that, just want to put it on a server that is running the latest stuff. That's the way they make it sound. What you're talking about is actually upgrading the project, which you have to do anytime you upgrade a version of Visual Studio anyways. So I think it's two different cases. I believe it is anyways.
And
let's-
email us if we're wrong.
yeah. Hey, let's get on to the next things because we are definitely running a little long tonight.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. This was a big topic. So web forms.
Yep. Are web forms dead? And the answer is no, wink. Right? So web forms 4.6, new version coming out. It's kind of come along with this. Alcohol Outlaw is making some funny faces over
I think I
there.
just blew my brains out.
He loves web forms.
All right.
Oh my god.
Not really.
But HTTP2 is supported in web forms. Also some async model binding and some
Hey, let's talk about
Roslyn kind
legacy
of
apps.
features. So what web forms aren't legacy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading ahead.
Yeah, so you can continue developing your web forms app. They've got a little blurb here, so you're still pretty good. And web forms aren't dead, but they're dead.
To us.
Yeah. So they're on their way out. So start thinking about it. As far as
And we'll
legacy
run
apps,
without modification, it says again. So
Yep.
you
And
know.
there's a couple new features like support for HTTP2, so it's not completely unsupported.
Yep. How long till Visual Studio goes cross platform?
Yeah, that's the real question. Never.
It's not happening, dude.
Well, like who would have thought Core CLR is going cross-platform?
That's a little
Well,
bit
I think
easier.
that was the hope that we always had, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like right out of the gate when Microsoft came out with .NET, they open sourced the that might be the wrong word, but they opened up the .NET's CLR specifications, and just no one else decided to implement it.
Yep.
So they wanted it to be cross-platform in the beginning,
Well, I'll tell you, if Visual Studio goes
or at least that was
cross-platform,
the image they projected.
if it goes cross-platform, I'll get a tattoo, a Microsoft tattoo.
Wow.
I think it's got to be like a big picture of Bill Gates.
Wait, do you want to have this in any particular given time frame? Because, dude, you left that open for a long time to come.
In the next,
is this like an Adam
7
Sandler
years,
thing, like
7
Waterboy,
years?
where it's where are you getting this?
on the forehead?
Wait,
Oh God, you're gonna have like Drake.
wait, 7 years?
Yeah, I'm actually.
Really?
Well, what I'm gonna do is see, I haven't told you guys, but I've already got a really embarrassing Zune tattoo, so I'm just gonna kind of overwrite that one.
Here goes another uncomfortable conversation.
Oh my God. I'm surprised that no one brought up when it's being released.
It's this year, right?
It's pretty much already there.
No, well, right now it's just in like beta.
They're talking about with Windows 10, right? Same
No,
time?
it officially comes out with Visual Studio 2015.
That's
which I from things that I've read, the target, if I remember correctly, was second quarter of this year. So
right. Soon.
yeah, well that could be like
All the way up to June, right?
yeah, into June, right? But one post that I read from someone who claimed to be a Microsoft employee was that like most of the bits were already locked down. They already had it settled. So like surprisingly, this is being done from multiple teams. So this is there's the ASP.NET VNext team that's doing their part to implement this, but then there's the whole Visual Studio team that's building the support for this thing.
Right.
That's a whole other team.
Yeah, that's a lot of
Right.
work.
So it's supposed to be quarter two from things that I've read. Hopefully that'll be consistent. But if it's anything like you mentioned Windows 10, there was an announcement, was it a couple days ago or last week? I think it was last week, where the announcement was that it would come out in summer, but if you read into that, that could be all the way into September.
Yeah. And I will say, I am using Windows 10 Preview. It's fantastic.
Although I remember Microsoft is based in Redmond, so Washington State. So their summer is like 3 weeks, so it's actually not that bad.
I think
God.
it's actually like 3 days.
It's a small window.
So in summary, real quick,
Yeah, really, when you boil it down, ASP5 is basically Java.
there it is. There it is. Everybody who wanted to leave the show was waiting for that.
Yep.
All right,
Bring
so
on J Sharp.
there it is.
It's
Yep.
back, baby.
So how fast can you say this, Alan?
It's faster, simpler, more flexible, cloud-friendly, cross-platform, open source, best practices. Basically, everything is better.
Yep.
Wow, that was a mouthful.
That was pretty good, right?
That was really good.
I need a drink.
All right. So resources we're going to have a ton of links in the show notes, but just real quick, there was a Scott Allen video on Pluralsight that just came out, I want to say like 12 days ago, that goes over ASP.NET 5. A lot of great information there. Visit ASP.NET/VNext. You'll get a lot of great information. One of the links in there is for the overview. We'll have that link in there as well. And there was another link that I found, or a blog entry that I found on one of the ASP.NET blogs by Scott Gu that had some great information on ASP.NET 5. So we'll have those links in there. So let's skip on to the tip of the week.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So you remember me dogging on Firefox earlier? Yeah, well, I'm about to make it real. All right, so my actual tip is for Firefox. So there's this is not a new extension, but if you're not already using it, then it's a cool one. It's called Tilt 3D. And if you're doing any kind of web development and you need to be able to see, sometimes being able to see the Z-index or just how the different components are stacking up on one another can be helpful. Tilt 3D is an add-in to Firefox. I think it's based on OpenGL, could be wrong, but it makes a 3D representation of your web page that you can spin and turn around
You
and
actually
flip
use this?
end over end, and you can actually see how everything is stacking on top of one another.
He doesn't use it. He likes to look at it.
Okay.
It's pretty.
'Cause I saw this like a couple years ago, and I was like, "Hey, it kind of looks like a city a little bit."
It does, yeah.
And then I never.
Well, like I
used it
said,
again.
it's not new, but some people might not have heard about it. So I thought, hey, why
Yeah.
not?
It's really cool. You'll use it once and then you'll disable the plugin.
But it's a good one.
It depends. Like I said, it depends on if you're doing things specific with like Z-index is where it can be helpful.
Yeah, and just be prepared depending on what JavaScript framework you're using to generate all your divs. this thing could probably kill your computer.
That's right.
I mean, this is probably more graphical intense
might
than Call of
explain
Duty or even Shadows of Mordor. This will
Might
probably
explain
crash
my
your system
issues with
faster.
Firefox earlier.
Yeah, right. All right, so my my tip of the week. This one's actually Outlaw and myself has shared this frustration. We program on Macs and we're using Boot Camp, and the newer Retinas have they double the DPI. So the way that it's handled in OS X is they basically, instead of trying to show it at the actual pixel, they scale it up 2 times. Well, the problem is go into Windows and they don't handle scaling quite as well. Even on
Not Windows 8.
8.1 doesn't, and even 10 isn't great so far, as if I remember right. I'd have to
I was
check.
pretty sure Windows 10 had this problem solved.
It may have. I'd have to go back and check. But
This is only a Windows 8 or 8.1. Specifically 8.1, we should say.
yeah, 8.1's frustrating because what happens is if you plug in a second monitor, it tries to scale them both the same. So if you try and increase the
Not scale.
well,
It doesn't scale it.
well,
That's
you
the problem.
Can. No, you can, and here's what was frustrating.
Well, I'm saying by default.
By default, it doesn't. But even if you try and set it up to where it does, you might get your laptop looking good, but now your bigger monitor over there is going to be just ginormous, right? Your font's going to be like an 80-point font. So
Right, your dead grandmother came back to life and can read it.
seriously, it's insane. So there is a scaling issue. Well, one of the things you can do, and this is not ideal, but I thought it'd be a nice tip. I actually saw somebody using it for a presentation one point, is if you want to use the zoom tool, and again, this is not ideal, but if you need to see something on a screen that's just the font's too small, you can hit the Windows key and the plus button, and it'll automatically zoom in. I think it goes to 200% by default, and then that way it doubles it. And so if there was something you needed to look at more closely, you can do that. And then if you want that zoom to go away, you just hit the Windows key and escape. It's fantastic for doing presentations in a room where you're trying to key in on a piece of code or something like that. But I found it fairly useful, and it's a nice little tip anyway. So Windows Zoom, the Windows key and the plus, and Windows key minus will zoom back out also. So pretty interesting.
Very cool. And my tip of the week comes from Lee Inglestone, who we've mentioned on the show before. He's at manchesterdeveloper.com. And I saw a tweet from him a little bit ago talking about a new project he was working on called SQL Pen. And as soon as I heard the name, I kind of knew exactly what he was going for. And I think it's awesome. And what it is it's a simple WPF app. Well, I assume it's simple. I don't hope didn't mean to offend you.
No offense.
I'm sure it's awesome. But it basically will kind of like run a query periodically, and you can kind of pin this to your desktop. So I have a little window open. So if you are, maybe doing a scary deployment or something like that, you could have a couple queries up there that are kind of refreshing to see if anything crazy is going on. You can just kind of keep that on your desktop and go about your day. So you can kind of pin these queries. And I just think that's awesome.
How much you want to bet one of the ones that he has is SP Who 2 active?
Yeah, no kidding.
That's probably running like every 2 seconds.
Yeah, so it's not open source, but you should go bug them about it because it sounds awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, so with that, like I said, we'll have lots of great information in the show notes. Be sure to check those out. Leave some feedback. We love it. Go to iTunes, go to Stitcher, leave us a review. We greatly appreciate it.
And, right, where are we at? Oh, yeah. So contact us with a question or a topic. We actually really like it when we get the emails on the topics because it helps us actually give you what you want. Leave your name, preferred method of shout out, website, Twitter, whatever, and we'll mention you on the podcast. And also, please do go to www.codingblocks.net/review to leave us a review. And you can find all the show notes for this particular episode at www.codingblocks.net/episode 25.
Yeah, and send us your feedback, questions, and rants to comments@codingblocks.net, and follow us on Twitter because we're funny at codingblocks.
Funny guys.
Yes. All right.
Funny looking.